Indigo became an important cash crop after Eliza Lucas Pinckney, the 17-year-old daughter of a plantation owner, experimented with the plant. Using seeds from the Caribbean, Pinckney spent several years growing different kinds of indigo. By 1744, samples of the dye made from her plants were of excellent quality. Pinckney gave her indigo seeds to neighbors and friends. Within a few years, South Carolina plantation owners were selling 1 million pounds of indigo a year to cloth makers in Europe. The plantations of South Carolina required many workers, and since there were not enough workers available, many landowners bought enslaved Africans. The coastal settlement of Charlestown, later renamed Charleston, became the most important seaport, social center, and slave market in the southern colonies. Review: which crops were valuable to the Carolina colonists? Georgia. The southern one-third of what had originally been Carolina was not settled by English colonists until 1733. A year earlier, King George II had given James Oglethorpe and 19 partners a charter to settle Georgia, a colony they named for the king. Oglethorpe was an English general and lawmaker. The charter gave Oglethorpe and his partners the right to settle the region between the Savannah and Altamaha rivers for 21 years. Oglethorpe and his partners hoped an English colony in Georgia would strengthen England's claim to the land. At the time, Spain, France, and England all claimed what became the Georgia colony. Oglethorpe also had the idea of bringing over debtors, people who were in prison for owing money, to settle the colony. In the 1700s, most debtors were imprisoned as punishment for not paying back money. Oglethorpe offered each settler 50 acres of land plus a bonus of 50 acres for every debtor that the settler brought along to help with the work of starting a colony. Those who paid their own way might get up to 500 acres. Oglethorpe hoped that once the debtors were out of prison, they would better themselves through hard work. Settling them in Georgia, he thought, was the answer to this social problem. In 1733, Oglethorpe and a group of more than 100 settlers established Savannah, near the mouth of the Savannah River. During the first year, to keep the colony fairly small, Oglethorpe limited the amount of land a person could own. To avoid conflicts with Native Americans, he forbade trading with them. He also did not allow slave traders to bring enslaved Africans to the colony. As a result, there were no plantations in Georgia, only small farms. In 1752, control of Georgia passed from Oglethorpe and his partners back to the king, making it a royal colony. With this change in ownership also came a change to allow slavery. As a result, plantations growing cash crops quickly began to develop, and Georgia landowners began to prosper. Their way of life became similar to that in the other southern colonies. Rice became the most profitable cash crop in the Georgia colony. Some Georgia planters became so wealthy from growing rice that they were able to own a house in a nearby town in addition to the one they had on the plantation. Review: what did James Oglethorpe accomplish as the leader of the Georgia colony? Biography: James Oglethorpe, 1696 to 1785. Character trait: kindness. While working as a lawmaker in England, James Oglethorpe found a special cause. He heard that a good friend of his had been sent to prison for not paying his debts. Oglethorpe hurried to the prison, but arrived too late. His friend had died of smallpox from the terrible conditions in the prison. Oglethorpe made up his mind then and there to help debtors. Multimedia biographies. Visit the learning site at www.harcourtschool.com to learn about other famous people. Virginia grows and changes. By the 1730s, after all of the other southern colonies had been founded, the Virginia colony continued to grow and change. By 1700, Virginia had become the largest English colony in North America. Because the population continued to grow, more and more settlers moved from the coastal areas of Virginia into the Piedmont, the Great Valley, and the mountains of western Virginia. Settlers from Pennsylvania also continued to move into these areas. In the 1700s, transportation improved throughout the Virginia colony. It became easier to travel between the coastal areas and the western part of the colony. Indian trails became small roads over which pack horses carried supplies. These roads soon widened and became wagon roads. Soon there were ferry boats that crossed rivers to transport passengers, livestock, tobacco, and other goods. When the ferries became very busy, The Virginia General Assembly voted to build bridges across some of the rivers. The General Assembly was made up of Virginia's governor, the Governor's Council, and the members of the House of Burgesses. While more people in Virginia were moving west, changes were also happening along the coast. In 1699, because of fires and other problems in Jamestown, the House of Burgesses moved to the nearby village of Williamsburg, which became the colony's new capital. By the mid-1700s, Williamsburg was a large, well-planned city. The city was soon being compared to other important cities of the 13 colonies, such as Boston, New York City, and Philadelphia. Williamsburg became the political, social, and cultural center of the Virginia colony. It was the home of many firsts for the colony. Virginia's first theater was built there in 1716. The colony's first successful printing press was set up there in 1728. Also, the first newspaper in the colony, the Virginia Gazette, was started there in 1736. Williamsburg remained Virginia's most important city for much of the 1700s. Review. How did transportation change in the Virginia colony? Lesson 1 Review. Generalize. How do you think most people in the southern colonies made a living? 1. Big idea. Why was selling crops for a profit important to the success of the southern colonies? 2. Vocabulary. Use indigo in a sentence to describe the accomplishments of Eliza Lucas Pinckney. 3. Timeline. In what year was the Carolina colony divided into 2 colonies? 4. Geography. What geographic factors led the Calverts to start a colony in Maryland instead of in Newfoundland? 5. Critical thinking. Hypothesize. What might have happened if rice and indigo had not grown well in the South Carolina colony? Performance. Write a paragraph. Find out what kinds of cash crops are grown today in the states that were once the southern colonies. Use the internet and other research tools to write a paragraph about the cash crops in those states. Share your paragraph with your classmates.